Together for Tomorrow is a program where we invite GFN listeners to listen to their opinions about GFN's current content and discuss the future of GFN. Together for Tomorrow is a special monthly program for celebrating GFN's 13th year anniversary. We invite our dear listeners and talk about improvements we shall make to better serve our listeners. When you live as a foreigner in a different country, it's hard to understand or know about the city before you experience it. People need a local voice because they need to know what's going on in the local area. GFN refers to Gwangju Foreign Language Network. GFN provides programming that caters to the needs and interest groups of diverse communities and contributes to making a better society. That being said, our network should reflect on foreign listeners' opinions and other diverse voices in the community. Unlike the previous episodes, we'll cover the episode with an English version. In today's episode, we sit down with a group of non-Korean listeners to talk about GFN's content and what we should deliver to help foreigners' life in Gwangju and South Jeolla region easier and better. So please stay tuned. Good morning, I'm your host, Ung-Ter-View, and today we have three guests here, Bren, Meline, Elsa. How are you all doing today?
Great.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so I would like to hear briefly about yourselves. Who would like to go first? Let's see. We're doing a little bit of,
I can go first.
Oh, Meline first.
안녕하세요. 루마니아 온지 멜리네라고 합니다. Hello, my name is Meline and I have lived in Gwangju for the past 5 years now. Oh my God, it sounds so long.
Yeah, 5 years. Wow.
Yes, and I'm still struggling with learning Korean, but I hope someday I'll be fluent. That's my goal for now.
Well, she sounded fluent enough when she was saying
Yeah.
hello and then gave us some Korean words before, so...
Yeah, well, I can do basic conversation. I want to do advanced conversations. That's the difference.
Okay. Now, let's give the microphone to Elsa this time.
Hello, I'm Elsa. I came from Ethiopia and I've been living in Korea for about 4.5 years now. The first year I lived like a year in Seoul doing my language studies, and I moved to Gwangju in 2019, which is like now 3.5 years ago. So I'm on my last year of university, my last semester actually.
Oh,
A senior in
Congratulations.
Chosun University, and I'm majoring in architectural engineering. I think that's usually how I introduce myself about it.
All right, architectural engineering.
Yes, architectural engineering.
How has it been going so far?
I think like this year is much better than like the previous 2 years, especially and the third year, because since we do all of our courses in Korean, like the first few years, it was a bit more challenging than this one, because now that we're on our last year, we only need to do like paper, like we don't have a lot of coursework. That means we don't have to do a lot of classes in Korean, which is a little bit of a relief. So yeah, it's better now. It has gotten a lot better throughout the years.
I guess because we are, not me, but our guests today are from other countries. So living here in Korea and then the language of Korean is definitely a little bit of challenging elements of life in Korea.
That's true, definitely. I've seen it through a lot of friends. Like one of the things that is like the most challenging thing about living in Korea is not being able to speak the language.
I understand. When I was in the US in the beginning, yes, that was very difficult for me too. Yeah. Well, let's give, last but not least, let's go to Bren this time.
Hello, everyone. So, yes, I'm Bren. I'm from Canada. I've been living in Korea for about 9 years. And, yeah, I've been living in Gwangju for almost 2 years. So, yeah, it's a great place to live. It's a good place to raise a family as well. I've got a nice 2-year-old daughter who's driving me crazy all the time. But, yeah, I love it here.
Oh, so you came to Korea like 9 years ago. You could be like a little bit of 선배. I came back to Korea 8 years ago, I remember. So you're like, your life in Korea might be a little bit longer than mine since I came back from the U.S.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It feels like a long time, but I did take 1 year back in Canada in the middle to do my master's degree. So altogether 9 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. We have some Korean life pros here, I guess. All right, well, shall we move on to the very first question of today's discussion? So first off, how did you first get to know about the radio station GFN, Gwangju Foreign Language Network? So who would like to go first? I'd like to ask Meline first.
Well, when I first moved here, of course, my Korean level was non-existent, right? So I would search for any information in English on internet. And when you search at that time, not too much information in English, basically two organizations would provide some information in English. One of them was GFN. And that's how I discovered GFN in the first place. And then I started to listen to GFN, well, because they had a lot of shows in English. And then their homepage where, you know, I could find different information, sometimes even applied for some of their activities. So basically that's how I discovered it, just by searching for English information related to Gwangju.
And that was, I'm trying to remember
2017.
Around 2017. So I believe that's a couple of years after GFN was actually established. Yes. All right. So actually, to summarize what Meline said, in kind of desperation of listening to some English language in daily life,
Yeah,
in
it's
everyday
like,
life.
you know, a saving card or something. I mean,
Yeah.
when you only hear Korean and you are not able to understand anything, and then suddenly you can hear something in English. It's like, wow.
You feel like, it's like kind of like home a little bit, or
Yeah.
you can. Korea is a foreign country to the people who are from other countries, so it must have provided some sense of kind of being home or more comfortable, right?
True.
And what about you, Elsa? How did you first get to know GFN?
For me, I think like back in 2019, like that was my first year in Gwangju, and like one of my friends who usually guested here sort of asked me to replace him in a show, like just as a guest, like in a first guest. I think that's how I found out about GFN, because for us, like most of our things we did with Koreans and the classes and everything, we didn't have a lot of time to even look for like international communities, I think, at the beginning. So I didn't know this existed in the first place, but after that I think we've listened to it a lot more often.
So the first time you got to know GFN was actually because you got offered as a guest position to be in one of the shows here.
Like, I knew like of it, but like I didn't know all the programs they had. Like I
Right.
knew there was an English broadcasting service, but I didn't know what sort of programs they had or like every detail about it. Yeah.
Which is the very point that we, GFN, would like to make some improvement, because a lot of foreigners and Koreans kind of know that GFN exists, or a lot more people don't even know GFN exists. So we gotta do some marketing to let people know that some of the shows we are making are actually really fun and good. Yeah. Especially for bilingual learners.
True.
Right. Okay, so Elsa offered the guest position here. That's how she got to know. Now let's go to Bren.
Yeah, so I probably first heard about GFN a few years ago when I was living in Naju, so not far away, but a lot of my coworkers lived in Gwangju and would commute to Naju. And so, of course, they listened to GFN, and I'd overhear them talking about different shows or announcers that maybe they knew personally too. But I didn't really get a chance to listen to GFN until I got a car, really, because that's really when I listen to the radio. I don't tend to listen to it at home, but definitely whenever I'm in my car, I listen to GFN, and especially now that I live in Gwangju, a lot more of the information applies to me, and it's really good for commuting as well. So Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's how I learned about it.
I think I could draw some kind of common denominator from these three people's statement on how they got to know about GFN. Mostly, you never got to know GFN through online advertisement or not from advertisement. It was basically from word of mouth,
Yeah.
from people we know. So, okay, that's been the main source of how GFN has been spreading around the community.
True.
And Brian just mentioned a critical point in terms of GFN's marketing strategy. Car. Recently, in my program way back with you, we conducted a survey question for our listeners. And over 85% of listeners were listening to the show in the car or on the move.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we need to take into consideration. The good old-fashioned, conventional radio listeners, they're, getting fewer and fewer. Most people started to watch YouTube or other content providers.
True.
Yes. Okay, that's one big hint we GFN need to focus on in terms of our listener segment.
Actually, even before I got a car, I didn't think that radio was very popular in general in Korea because I never heard it, like even in stores or out in public. You'd never hear somebody just turn on the radio.
Right.
So I just thought that it wasn't a thing, really. But yeah, now that I actually have a car, and I'm like, oh, there's actually lots of radio stations in Gwangju. So it was surprising, yeah.
My pop-up question for you is that, so among you, who are the drivers actually?
I am.
Me.
Bren, Meline.
Not a driver. I have
Okay.
a driving license, but I don't have a
And
car
yes,
here.
I do listen to GFN when I'm in my car while I'm driving.
So definitely, I think drivers tend to just tune in radio because that's the easiest thing. Like instead of connecting to Bluetooth and
Yeah.
That's true.
then connecting to whatever like Millen or other services. What about you, Elsa? When you walk on the street or when you take the public transportation, when you use your earbuds, what do you usually listen to? Music or
Music.
podcast?
I usually listen to music, but like actually even GFN, most of the time I listen to it in my friend's car, like either when I'm getting a ride from him, going to school with him, or away from him
Okay.
in the
So
car still.
for pedestrians, for those who don't really drive often, regularly, for them, listen to music usually.
Yes.
And then for drivers, we just turn on the radio because that's
Yeah.
just easy.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd agree with that.
My personal experience has been like when I get in a cab, cab drivers usually they put on a radio, and especially it's usually local radio stations.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have really different feel compared to nationwide radio stations or TV broadcasting companies. Even when I first went to the States, I got into the car and it was a local Philadelphia radio station. And I still remember the jingle, the signal music of that specific radio station.
Oh, wow.
Whenever I hear it, it feels like my second home, Philadelphia. Yeah. I wish GFN could have that kind of could deliver that kind of feel to our listeners as well with the jingle, our signature line. Yeah.
Yeah, some more branding in that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. All right. Well, we're going to move on to the next question. Now, it's time to hear from our guest whether GFN is doing a good job in terms of reaching out to local listeners and providing adequate information catered to local listeners, especially non-Korean listeners and the expat community. So how do you think we are doing? It's the time that you can be critical of us. Yes. Elsa?
I can start. I think it's doing pretty good job, especially like delivering the news, because even though usually if you're a foreigner, you have to go sort of out of your way to find news, which is in English. And the thing is, if we just tune into the radio and listen to like the daily updates of news, you can get everything like quick and on time. So you wouldn't have to miss any sort of update. I think it sort of showed like during COVID, especially because there were so many regulations, updates like every now and then, and like they kept up with that. And personally, even though I didn't catch that, like usually my friend listens to that and tells me. So even if it's through people, we get the update faster.
I'm glad to hear that because in our news segments and in Way Back With You and in a lot of GFN programs focused on giving the most up-to-date information in terms of COVID-19 restrictions. When I was delivering the news, part of me was a little bit sick of it because I had to give updates every day. And at some point, I was like, would people even be tuning into all these details? But I'm glad that there were out there listeners who are listening to these COVID minute details of the updates.
It was very relevant, especially for non-Korean speaking communities.
Right.
Yeah, I think it really made a difference.
Okay, well, that's a 1 point for GFN. We did a good job. News updates and COVID updates.
Yes.
All right. What about some negative points that you could come up with, something that we can improve? If you can come up with it right now, then we can just hear from others and you can think about it in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything
No.
now.
Oh, are we doing that good job? I'm not sure about that. What about, let's go to Milline.
I also think news, especially local news translated into English, are very useful. Some of them are really, Gwangju related or Jeolla related or very specific related. And you can't find those news in English elsewhere,
Right.
except GFN. So now if you listen to GFN, then you know what the City Hall has decided or what, I don't know, Naju City Hall wants to implement. Or sometimes they're like really, really useful information. And sometimes you can even learn about, I don't know, events happening around Gwangju.
Right.
Also in English. Some of them are not promoted in English, except when GFN does it.
Recently, we talked about the sauce festival, Changnyu Festival, that was held in Suncheon County, which is about 40 minutes up north from Gwangju. And then
They have the soybean and
the gochujang pepper
Exactly,
paste.
exactly.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the
they are
city
famous.
of paste. Yes. So yeah, we definitely promoted that kind of those kinds of local festivals, and I believe GFN is one of the really few local radio stations who can deliver these news in English. Yes.
yes.
And we also talked about the Gwangju Chungjang Festival, which is Gwangju's signature festival. And they had Buskers World Cup.
Yeah.
Have you guys checked it out
Yes.
in Chungjang-no?
I think this year, so for me, this year Chuncheon Festival was the best up to now. So I discovered it by chance, I think in 2017 or 18, I don't remember. But now, this year was the best.
Okay.
It had so many activities and things to do, and the Basking World Festival, and wow, it was full of events. I mean, the entire downtown city of Gwangju was full of...
It does feel like there's a lot of life in the city.
Yes,
now.
it felt like
Yes.
very global also because of the Basking World Cup Festival. But yeah, it was so alive.
True. After so many years, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we could improve from that is that I've gotten feedbacks from other listeners that if you could cover more of like GIC and Gwangju related small events such as like flea market which is going to be held in some bar or other places, and especially those events where Koreans and foreign community can mingle together, that would be what GFN could provide as a bridging these two different cultures and like making it into one big community.
Absolutely.
Yes, many events I think are unknown for the foreigners because they don't know. And
Right.
sometimes you don't even know where to search for those events. And they
Yes.
can be really interesting, even if they are like small-scale events. And about GIC, someone used to come in the past, and deliver GIC weekly news or once in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Doesn't this happen anymore?
Right. It discontinued from some time on, and I think
I
we
didn't know.
We need to keep doing that. We need to get back to it. I think. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I know Kim Dae-jung had the same...
Convention Center. Yeah.
Yes, they still do this, come and promote, because they too have a lot of exhibitions and some of them are really interesting, and they don't promote those exhibitions in English unless they come to GFN. They used to do this in the past. I'm not sure if they are doing this right now.
Okay, that's one thing we could definitely improve. Now let's go to Bren. And could you tell us how GFN has been doing?
Yeah.
Have you been doing a good job in terms of reaching out to the local listeners and then bringing them together?
Yeah, so I think it's been doing a great job, like all the others said, especially with the quality of information that you can get. Not only is it good to have this local information, but the detail that is provided, I think, is really good, especially on This Morning Gwangju. Try to listen to every time I'm driving to work in the morning. Yeah, it's just amazing different things I learn about in the city. Like you said, like Melina said, or Melina, the learning about City Hall and local politics. It might not be that interesting to most people, but just kind of hearing about it makes me feel like I'm more part of the community. So I really like that that kind of information isn't overlooked just because, oh, maybe the foreigner community isn't interested. I like that they do talk about that just because it makes me feel like part of the community. But yeah, where I think it could be better is, first of all, I think there should be more. I'm always pretty disappointed when the news shows end. I'm like, oh, I was just getting into it. Like, I want to know more.
Too short.
It's too short, and it also does kind of feel rushed at times. I like that there's some commentary, but I also feel like the writers are trying to get it on the table really fast, and then the announcers, the people reading it and commenting on it, are also kind of seeing it for the first time and trying to formulate opinions and ideas about it really quickly. So maybe if shows like This Morning Gwangju were stretched out maybe an extra hour, it could actually make it feel less rushed and maybe also give listeners more time to absorb what they're listening to. So when I'm driving in my car, you know, even though I'm listening to it, it's like, oh, what are they talking about? What did they say? I didn't quite catch it, because sometimes they're talking too fast, or maybe it's just something really nuanced. And yeah, so I think if it were stretched out, it would be better. And also if there were more news and information programs, so not just in the morning, but also for the drive home in the afternoons. Usually when I'm driving home, it's a lot of programs that are broadcast from Seoul, which are fine, but I'm missing that local information, right? I want to know what's going on here. So a lot of the stuff in Seoul doesn't really apply to me.
Well, when you hit the road back home, you might want to listen to Way Back With You.
I do, but yeah, it's usually on a little bit later. Yeah,
even
I usually
later.
I go home earlier before Way Back With You starts.
Okay.
Yeah, so earlier in the afternoon would be better.
All right. But some of the points that Bren just mentioned are actually critical to a lot of radio broadcasters. One thing we, radio broadcasters, to keep in mind is that most of our listeners are constantly multitasking.
Yeah.
So we need to write things much simpler, much more straightforward, so that people can just take it in as soon as they hear it. So instead of going for a very newsy writing style, making it breaking things down, breaking facts down, or breaking down to easy sentences really, really helps listeners really tune in and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think there seems to be an effort to use the most complicated or academic words when they often aren't necessary, when there's a lot of simpler words that would do a better job.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing to look at, but also maybe just give everybody else a little bit more time to actually read it out.
So what Bren mentioned, if I summarize it, it's like, take it slow.
Yeah.
Take it slow, and then let's go easier. Take it easier and take it slow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I really believe in those two elements of a radio show, and at Way Back With You. At least we try to do that. So maybe we could convert him to Way Back With You.
Oh, I love that show. I just can
Me
never
too,
listen
and
to
Way
it.
Back With You has a specific effect on me.
Oh.
So Dana's voice is so calm
It's
and
very
relaxed.
relaxing,
And
yes.
when you're listening to her talking, even if I'm stressed, driving or angry, or I get calm just like that.
I agree.
Now we're going to move on to the next question. And the last question of part 1 would be, so now we've been talking about what do you think about GFN in terms of our performance. But we heard from you that most of the routes that you got to know about GFN was through word of mouth.
True.
So in terms of that, how can GFN better market us, brand us in terms of marketing and promotion? Any good ideas or suggestions that you have for GFN? Like if you could do this, you could promote GFN a lot better than now.
I would suggest partnerships with other local organizations and especially universities.
Yes.
Because at the universities you have also the foreign students and the Korean students, and all Korean students, they learn English, right?
Right.
So basically the entire campus would be your target. And I know GFN promotes itself on social media. It's not enough. Banners, everything, something visible in all universities, in all the campuses, I think it will do good.
Most people think online marketing is the way to go, but I think the good old-fashioned banners and then going to people and dishing out the cards, I think those would work really well, especially on campuses.
I think, and I was going to talk about universities as well, because I work at one, and I feel the same exact way. I'm always surprised when my students have not heard of GFN, because to me, it's one of the best ways that English language learners could get exposure to real, authentic English. So it's great for Korean students as well as non-Koreans. But yeah, there's so many things that GFN could be doing. I know, with events, for example, maybe broadcast some live events from a university, so that it's sort of so that when students hear about it, they're not hearing about it for the first time, and maybe they wouldn't associate it so much with only foreigners, but maybe with young people or good music or whatever event or GFN decides to associate itself with, maybe just culture in general. So I think banners, physical banners or posters would be a great place to start with that, and put them where it's visible at universities and elsewhere where young people or learners congregate.
Since we're running out of time, I'm just going to briefly mention that what Melina and Bren said focuses on, to my surprise, students. So far, GFN has been focusing on foreigners. But students might be another segment that we should focus on. Okay, after we take a short break, we're going to get back to the previous question, and we're going to hear from Elsa. And that's how we're going to open up part 2 together.
You're listening to GFN in Gwangju and Yasu.
More variety, better society. Here in Gwangju, a leading and rising global city, there are a number of foreign residents active in various fields. Aaron and Sandro, 2 foreign members of Gwangju FC, say what they think of as the attraction of Gwangju.
안녕하세요. Gwangju FC defender Aaron입니다. I like Gwangju food. In particular, orotang and eobakshige are my favorite. Also, I like boribap very much. I like Gwangju, where you can eat delicious food in a friendly restaurant. Please send great support to Gwangju Metropolitan City and Gwangju FC.
안녕하세요. Gwangju FC Sandro입니다.
Hello, I'm Sandro from Brazil.
Gwangju é bom porque tem a montanha.
I like it that Gwangju has the Mudengsung Mountain. It's great to have training in the Mudengsung Mountain. The view is amazing, the air is fresh, and there are many valleys. So this mountain is a good place to rest and relax too. I love Gwangju with this beautiful Mudengsung Mountain. This mountain gives me positive energy to move forward and work harder.
Gwangju FC vai lutar com o poder de Mudengsung.
This campaign has been brought to you by Amore Pacific.
저희 중소기업은 광고비가 제일 부담되죠.
코바코에서 TV, 라디오 광고비 지원받으세요. 혁신형 중소기업 방송광고 지원 제도로 광고비 70% 할인이나 250% 보너스 광고 지원.
코바코로 문의하세요. 062-652-3600.
All right, welcome back to our special monthly talk show, Together for Tomorrow. Now it's time for part 2. I'm your host, Ung Tae-ryu, and we have 3 guests here. Bren, Meline, Elsa. We talked about, in part 2, how GFN is doing in terms of serving the local community and how our listeners got to know about GFN. And it turned out that mostly it was from word of mouth.
True.
So, yeah, we've got a clue how to promote GFN better to more college students and to more local-based listener segments. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking about a better way to promote GFN, and now it's time for Elsa to give us some insight into the matter.
Well, like, even though we said that, like, you usually hear it from people, but the thing is, afterwards, especially like after even you got to know about GFN, like knowing about the content, you have to go to the website to see it. Like they do, like you guys have some content like online on social medias,
right.
But I think it could use like more content. Like you could put on more detailed informations about like all the shows you have, because let's say on the social media, there isn't much detail about like all the shows you have here. And maybe like sometimes if you do daily updates, what like clips from the shows you guys did, and if someone hear like, because you get it on your feed, like if you hear it and this is something I want to listen to, so they could actually go back and listen to it. So I think updating that more often and uploading more content and like detail, it would really promote like even within like the community who already heard about the GFN, like not even like just not introducing to the new people, but also the ones who don't know more detail about it. I think
that's a great point. That makes me think about. I came up with 2 questions that I want to ask all of our guests. So first, have you checked out GFN website homepage?
Yes.
All 3 of you.
Yeah.
And what is the social media that you mostly often use? For Meline,
like because homepage, Instagram, for example.
Yeah. Instagram.
But GFN, each show or some of the shows have their own Instagram, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, if you like that show, you can follow that Instagram. But I would like GFN to have something to combine everything. Basically what Elsa said. So, for example, I would give an example now. You guys recently posted a promotional, very funny clip with some of the presenters, from different shows.
Yeah.
And you did that.
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
I've seen that.
Wow,
too.
it was so cute and nice. And I think it was a very good promoting clip.
Okay.
So if you can do more like that, and also spread to Facebook, because some of the listeners are older and they still prefer Facebook and not Instagram, I think that would be good.
That was another question that I wanted to ask. In terms of the age and in terms of the ethnic segment, different people prefer different social media. For me, I think I'm getting older. I don't really use Insta that often, and neither Facebook. I just stick to my good old-fashioned Kakao Talk. And then most people these days have migrated to Instagram. Some people are still staying in the realm of Facebook. So that's what I kind of wanted to figure out. So 3 of you, mostly often, you go to Instagram.
Me, I'm going to Instagram and Facebook, but I have a teenage daughter. She told me Facebook is for older people, and when she said older people, she meant like grandmas and grandpas.
Yeah.
Even Instagram now is for older people like my age.
Moved on to TikTok, I'm
Yes,
guessing.
like
Exactly.
TikTok.
And then
Yeah.
there are so many other platforms
Okay.
that are gaining more and more popularity these
Right.
days.
Ah.
So maybe you need this kind of insight from a teenager.
It takes a lot of resources and time to establish a marketing channel in one platform.
Yeah.
Wow. So GFN will have to make a choice. I mean, it'll be very difficult to keep promoting in all of those channels, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
If you want to do
that'll be
this, you
tough.
need to hire someone, especially for doing the social media promoting.
I think if you do Facebook and Instagram at the same time, it's easier than mixing like with the different, because you can post the same thing on both Facebook
At
and
the same
Instagram,
time.
like with
Copy
the
and
same,
paste,
like
right.
you could just post the same, like
Okay.
video or just a text.
And one that you haven't talked about yet, but I think like GFN does have a presence is on YouTube.
Right.
I'm
right.
trying to
Yeah.
I'm trying to get away from a lot of social media, but I still watch a lot of YouTube. It would be good if I could find, like Melina was saying, all of the YouTube clips from all the different shows all together on the GFN website instead of just going to each individual show's YouTube channels or Instagram, things like that. So if it were consolidated, maybe it's, again, I'm just getting older, but for me, that would be really good.
This is
I really
another
enjoy that.
very important insight because recently what GFN employees have been trained to try more was to diversify, making each program's own YouTube channel instead of making everything under the one roof of GFN TV channel. But what listeners want seems to be the opposite.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to find it all in
I
one
would say
place.
this division of it's kind of Korean style, if you ask me. And for us non-Koreans, it's easier, as Brent said, to have everything under one roof, and you can just choose whatever you want to see instead of going to all these channels just, to see something.
Okay, all right.
Well, even if you still have the channels, but if you still promote every content on the main one, like people who are interested in that content can see it from the main and go to that
And go to
page.
that channel.
Yes.
Or put a
But if
link,
you don't
just
show it
one
there,
click.
like if you don't show it on the main page, like you have to promote everything on the main GFN page.
So it'd be a
I think.
really good idea if GFN keeps promoting kind of the overview of the week on GFN TV channel and Instagram and Facebook as like overview, and then put links so that each listener could choose whatever they want.
Yep, just a touch away. So I think
Okay,
it's-
okay. So far, those have been some great suggestions to better promote GFN. Go to social media. Okay, we gotta do like 2-track strategy. One, old-fashioned dishing out cards on campuses, focus a little more on students. And B, keep our presence on social media, especially Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. But there's gotta be one consolidated page almost every week that shows the overview of the weekly programs, for the listeners can just go there with one click. Okay, those are the conclusions. Wow. Come up with these kind of conclusions in an internal meeting, it takes days. But with our listeners, this is the power of collective intelligence. Yes. Together for Tomorrow is working. Yay. Yay. All right, let's move on to the next question. Now, this question is about how to promote diversity within the local community. What GFN could do better in terms of promoting the diversity. Now, who would like to go first about this subject? Okay, let's hear from Bren.
I think it's extremely difficult. I think GFN has a really noble mission here, and I think they are doing a good job. But what GFN is trying to do really is to kind of help Korean media stop treating foreigners as some kind of novelty or like a cartoon character. Like when you watch Korean TV, foreigners go on TV, That's kind of the feeling you get. It's just like
either they're novelties or clowns.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think stations like GFN really go a long way in sort of dispelling that idea, which is great, but there's still a lot that could be done. I think programs like Codebreakers Korea is really good with this because you get a lot of diverse guests coming on and sharing their own experiences, not just from their home countries, but from their experiences living in Gwangju as regular citizens of Gwangju. So I think things like that really, really help. So if we have more of it, it could only be better. Yeah. That's kind of my idea.
Okay, so to lift the veil and stereotype about foreigners from Korean perception, GFN is doing quite an okay job, but we need to do more of that so that Korean broadcasting companies, or especially GFN, would set a model so that we wouldn't treat foreigners like either. As we said, that was a really good way to put either like novelties or clowns.
Yeah.
And that's definitely kind of stereotyping, biases, and over-dramatization all involved within the concept of the idea of business of broadcasting in Korea. I think that's one side effect South Korea has been kind of suffering, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so to promote the diversity, GFN needs to deliver the foreigners or foreign nationals' life as it is instead of discoloring it for the show.
Right.
All right.
And just getting diverse experiences, stories. Yeah.
Okay. And what about Meline? To promote diversity, what GFN should do more or what we could do better?
Maybe, let's say, have a 1 week show and in this show to address one stereotype, for example, and debate it from both Korean and foreigner perspective.
A show to address different perspectives on stereotypes.
Exactly. And it can be also bilingual. Why? Because if I'm an English listener, okay, then I just get it, in English, but then I can hear it in Korean, so I can understand it better. If I'm a Korean, I understand it in my own language, but then I can hear it in English.
Yeah.
So doing this kind of show maybe once a week, like a debate, and addressing one stereotype, by week, I think in time we can, get some good results.
This idea is great. We can give it to Codebreakers Korea because Codebreakers is very similar. They deal with these kind of topics. What we could give them is bring in a little more of the bilingual element so that both Koreans and non-Koreans will be on the same page in terms of the stereotypes or those biases they are addressing in the show. Okay, that's a great idea as well.
May I add something? Sometimes when the shows are bilingual, let's say I start speaking in English and I finish in Korean, or I say one sentence in English and one in Korean. Usually they're like this. But as a listener, especially when I'm in my car and I'm tired after work, sometimes I find it difficult to, follow the entire conversation. But I've heard this kind of bilingual shows exactly the way I said. So the first one is in English entirely, and then the same subject or the same discussion in Korean. Then it's more easier to understand.
Yeah, because you've heard it before, you can expect it.
Exactly. You know the content, and then you can focus on the Korean words and vice versa.
So listeners would actually prefer hearing like what the sentence A in English and then another sentence in Korean doesn't have to be repeated in exactly same content. It can be the next sentence but in a different language. That would be more, in terms of flow, that would be better, but which would you prefer? Hearing the exactly same sentence in a different language or just moving on to the next sentence but in a different language?
I think Melina and I are feeling the same way on this. Is like, if it's a different sentence and a different language, it's really hard to follow.
Exactly.
Or like if you're splitting one sentence into two languages, it's really hard because you have to switch in your brain to a different language. Even if you know both languages, it's really difficult. But it would be really good if, say, I hear a headline in English and then I hear the same headline in Korean, then I can make those connections in my brain and kind of help me to learn Korean or English if I'm an English learner, rather than just kind of getting confused. Like, are they saying the same thing? Is this a translation, or are they just going into a different topic?
Well, this is extremely important because at Way Back With You, we've been experimenting. Yeah. Sometimes we would do sentence A in Korean, but next sentence in English. And we found that it might be difficult for listeners to follow. So these days we have been sticking to same sentences in English and Korean. Moving on to the next part, English and Korean.
Yeah, I think
so that's better.
I think that's a better way, but I think maybe people will have different opinions depending on their fluency in both languages.
Right. I agree. Like, it really depends on how well you can speak Korean or English. Yeah.
Right.
And your survey showed that 85% of the listeners
multitasking.
Multitasking while driving, right?
Yeah.
So it will be really difficult to 100% concentrate on the discussions if they are mixed, English and Korean.
Okay. However, I have to bring our attention back to the original question was how to promote the diversity within the local community. So I'm going to bring your attention back to that question. And Elsa, do you have any good ideas about promoting the diversity?
I think they already said most of what I was thinking.
One thing I wanted to add to this question was that GFN has been focusing on either English, Korean, and in the past a few years, Chinese and Vietnamese. We have been focusing on these languages based on the Immigration Office statistics of the number of population of each country, each nationality. But there are a lot of migrant laborers who are from third world countries. And I think we have to find a way, GFN has to find a way to involve those people into GFN's programs as well. They might speak completely different languages, such as from Bangladesh or from some of the African countries. But there's got to be a way we should be able to involve them and then get out of our boundaries of these languages, either Korean, English, and Vietnamese and Chinese. That's one thing I just wanted to address. Yeah.
I mean, like, most of them probably speak English. So the thing is, not just the language, maybe you can have, I'm sure like most countries, if they have at least more than 10 people here, they would know each other. So even if it's not a big community, they would form like a little bit of community where they meet up together, discuss things. So if there is any way, like from people who know that, like anyone from that community, they can have someone represent them or talk about it on the show, like not necessarily in a different language, but they can just talk in English
and represent the voice.
Yes.
Okay.
Like not changing the language, but they could get their point out there.
That's why each of our listeners, each member of this local community, whether it doesn't matter what kind of nationality they represent, each member is important.
That's true.
Yes. All right, now I'm going to move on to probably the most important question of the part 2. So what kind of content, what kind of show would you like to listen to from GFN programs? That's the big question. So what kind of suggestions would you have? Let's hear from like anyone who wants to jump in first.
Can jump in, I guess. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a very diverse group of people that you're trying to reach, like you said. And all of them are going to want some kind of different things. I think everybody can probably agree that they want to be entertained when they listen to the radio. So I think music probably plays a big part of that. So GFN plays a lot of great music, but I have noticed that unless it's a specific music show, a lot of the music is really K-pop ballad focused, which, I mean, nothing wrong with that music, but maybe GFN could take advantage of its position as foreigner radio station and maybe expose people to more international music and different genres of music.
like
or
more
rock.
Indian or
Yeah.
Pakistani.
Sure.
Yeah, different music of the world, maybe Romanian and Ethiopian as well.
Yeah, I mean, every country has pop music, so
Right.
it doesn't have to be very obscure even, but just maybe something a little bit more diverse in the musical department.
Oh, last time I was a guest in my real trip, and like they gave us the opportunity to choose the music. Like you
great.
get like to choose 8 music by yourself, and I chose one Ethiopian music. I think I remember, and that would be a really good opportunity for other people to use. Too.
Oh,
and
yes,
if you
absolutely.
can expand that, that would
Right,
be nice.
right.
Do a show, music by request.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, music by request. I love that idea. Yes. And also what Bren said about the increased diversity in terms of the music selection is connected to our previous question as well. This might be another way to involve more people from different cultural background.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, besides that, I mean, the local programming, the news, the information is great for travelers and expats. But I know that I would definitely like to know more about local events, but also different natural attractions in the area that maybe I could take my daughter to on the weekend. Kind of like Melina was saying before, you wouldn't really know about unless you did a search online in Korean.
Yeah.
So just to make those things a little bit more exposed to the foreigner population would be great.
So local tourist gems,
that'd be
excavate them and then spread them more.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, in English. And what about other shows that you would like to listen to? Other ideas from Meline and Elsa?
For example, let's say we address to newcomers, right? Or maybe travelers that are passing by through Gwangju. I think information related to good restaurants with international cuisine or not Korean cuisine would be something interesting. Not many people, especially when you are new here, it takes some time to adjust to Korean food, especially for some of them, right? So they would be in search of these places that have other food. And it's not that easy all the time to find those places in English.
A great idea for those transitional foodies
Yeah.
who just arrived in Korea, who might love to try Korean cuisine, but some of the Korean cuisine are very pungent or very the palate. It's an acquired taste.
That's true.
Yeah, even for
those who miss their home countries, you know, sometimes eating something different, not Korean food, can be, I don't know,
very comforting, right?
Yes, very comforting
absolutely.
at some point.
So Meline's suggestion is more info or a new show on non-Korean cuisine of Gwangju and South Jeolla Province.
And even coffee shops. Some of them are really interesting and with good desserts. Others, you just pay a lot of money for nothing.
Right.
You pay the view.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, plus cafes. And now let's go to Elsa.
Well, I'm a student here, as I mentioned earlier, and like it would really be great if we can get more content, like how even like when you first start here for newcomer students, how like what to expect from schools, like what sort of experience, like even if you have attended university in your own country before, it's probably different how you can face, because personally and like everyone around me, like my friends, we have experienced like so many difficulties, and if someone else had shared that with me, like it probably would have been easier, or I would have prepared for it. So I think students like here are the ones that like really they need guidance, I would say, and like being able to get any sort of experience from other students would definitely be of help.
Oh, I love that idea as well. I think I have a name for the show or a segment. It is going to be like tips by foreigner 선배 or something like that. Yeah.
So many things, like or how to do internship, because it's different for foreigners.
I was thinking of this name, How to Do, a show named How to Do. and how to open a bank account,
Yeah.
how to set up your account on Coupang.
That's true.
You have no idea if you don't know Korean.
Wow.
You are dead meat.
Yes, they definitely. Like so many friends of mine came to like even ordering things in Coupon. If you can't speak Korean, it's very difficult. Like they do it by muscle memory. Honestly, like they do it a few times, and then after that, it's muscle memory. They can't read it, but then still like having someone or explaining how to do it or tricks. Like it doesn't have to be the exact way, but like some people might have like tricks how to survive in Korea, like even without speaking. So like this is very necessary for others to hear.
It'd be like expats how to in Gwangju. And this would be also great for YouTube content because we can show on the screen, like for example, if you don't know how to do Coupang, we can show it on the screen and then just put it on there. Just click this, and then it'll be voila.
Yeah,
right.
That'd be a great resource.
Okay. We have some more points that I wish we could talk about, but we have completely used up our time of this monthly special talk show, Together for Tomorrow. So far, we've been talking about how GFN has been doing in terms of serving the local community and how we could serve even better, along with some great ideas for new segments and new shows. All right, well, thank you very much. So far, it's been Ben, Melanie, and Elsa here. We hope to hear from you again in some of our shows here at GFN. Would you say goodbye to our listeners?
Bye-bye. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming here. That was all for the 8th episode of Together for Tomorrow, where we invited a group of non-Korean listeners within the community and discussed ways for GFN to improve to better serve the local community. Together for Tomorrow is a show for you, dear listeners. Please visit our website and let us know if you would like to join our monthly show and talk about improvements that GFN shall make. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. So far, this has been your host, Yoo Ung-tae. And I'll be back next month with the November episode of Together for Tomorrow. See you next month.